everybody. It's a little after 7, so we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight for the first of a two-part lecture series, Busted in Justice, Cultivating Safer Learning Environments in Schools. Just before we get started with the introductions, a quick announcement that we've got some press here tonight who's going to be taping part of Ivan's talk. And I just wanted to sort of a raise of hands if anybody's uncomfortable. He's going to sort of hand the audience a little bit tonight. So is there anybody that's viscerally uncomfortable with being videotaped tonight? If you just wanted to let us know, and Jerry will make sure that you're not in the camera scape. Everybody's okay? All right, great. So a special welcome to Ivan Coyote, this year's writer-in-residence at Western University. So I'm going to just really briefly introduce Ivan now, and then at the end of the evening I have some more information on some other events later in the semester that's going to feature Ivan and her work. It's a real honor and a privilege to welcome Ivan to London for the fall and here tonight at the Faculty of Education. Not only is Ivan an award-winning author of 6 short story collections, 1 novel, 3 CDs, and 4 short films. Not only is she an accomplished performer who's worked in a range of media, including performance poetry, film, music, and creative fiction. And not only has she told inspiring stories to festival goers, social justice activists, literacy students, and senior citizens all across the continent, but she's also worked with students, teacher candidates, and schools for the past 15 years, giving performances on issues around gender, inclusion, bullying, social responsibility, all the way from schools in Yellowknife and Northwest Territories to technical institutes in Germany. She's here tonight to share with us a talk on improving safety and the culture of our schools, entitled As Good as We Can Make It, on bullying, collective responsibility, and actually making it better. So please welcome Ivan Coyote.
Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Tonight I'm going to read, it's like a keynote address that I wrote originally. I was invited to speak. It was fantastic at a Gay Straight Alliance, like a GSA conference in Nova Scotia. And there was delegates, high school delegates, teachers, teacher candidates, and school administrators and principals from all over Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, and even some who had come from Newfoundland as well. So I'm going to read you basically what I wrote because I think it addresses, hopefully, the topics at hand for this two-part series. So, and then we're going to do a little question and answer afterwards. So feel free to ask me pretty much anything. Yeah. So I've been a road dog lately. Festivals, theaters, conferences, planes, boats, rental cars, road, and then some more road, and schools. I've been doing a lot of high school gigs lately. Sometimes I wonder if maybe I get the opportunity to see the insides and the guts of more high schools and shake hands with more students and stumble through more uncomfortable introductions to more principals and cover more territory, span more provinces and borders and districts and countries even than almost anyone working in our education system today, in a weird way. I'm sure it's quick and I'm there and then gone in a little under 2 hours mostly, but still. You get a sense of a place, a taste of it anyway. And more I'm sampling the smorgasbord of our school system and where it best serves our students and where it is still falling short. I do a 1-hour show designed to fit in between bells, 45 minutes or so of storytelling, followed by a 10 to 15 minute question and answer, and hopefully discussion period. I don't say the word queer, or gay, or lesbian during this show, nor do I talk about sexuality really at all. I just tell stories. Stories about myself, my little sister, and my 2 little cousins, Dan and Christopher. Christopher was an awkward and clumsy kid who was mercilessly teased and picked on all throughout school right from the beginning. I tell simple stories about the four of us. Stuff we used to do when we were young. Stupid, broke-ass, bored, small-town kid kind of stuff. And I tell this one story about how Christopher had gigantic feet for his age. Size 13 feet, in fact, by the time he was 8 years old. True story. I tell the story about this one summer we all got secondhand roller skates. All of us except Christopher, who could not cram his gigantic feet into the cool roller skates, the cheap ones. So we had to buy him brand new, but old-fashioned. Those crappy old-fashioned kind that you had to buckle up over your own shoes, remember? Some of us can remember. And anyway, long story short, he wipes out and he craps his pants. And of course, all of us love a good poop your pants story. It's true. It's a classic, I believe. It's the great leveler. We have all pooped our pants once or twice, you know, when we were babies, of course, and then accidentally here and there throughout our lives. And of course, every single one of us is probably going to shit ourselves again at some point on our way out of this world, unless it happens very quickly, and we never saw it coming at all. So in this way, pooping yourself is one of those things that makes us all human, brings us all together, right? It's very touching, really, when you think about it. And so needless to say, of course, this story goes over very well with the kids, and I achieve my primary objective, which is to get them to all identify somehow with this kid, my clumsy and unlucky little cousin, to invest in him somehow, to care about him, to sympathize. Hopefully we all laugh together, and then I sit back. I sit back and I wait for the question, which almost always comes. Almost every show, some little kid, usually some skinny, little awkward kid, puts up their hand, asks me, "Where's Christopher now? Where's Christopher now?" I tell them that I know what they want me to tell them. I tell them I really wish I could tell them what I know they want to hear. I say how much I wish I could tell them that my little clumsy cousin Christopher grew into those gigantic feet, eventually became a tall and handsome man who would go on to marry a tall and handsome woman, and they would have 2 tall and handsome children, heterosexual children, and now he lives happily in a suburb somewhere, and he works at his successful yet fulfilling job in the IT industry, and that they have a little brown dog and a white picket fence. But I can't tell them that because Christopher died on Christmas Eve in his 21st year of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. And that's why I come into high schools. I tell them that I want them all to realize that somebody actually cares about them and that they have a right to access their public education without the threat of physical, emotional, or spiritual violence. Then we talk about bullying and what we can all do to work towards building a safe and respectful learning environment for each and every one of them. Sometimes we talk about my tattoos, and off I go. So last fall I was in St. John's, Newfoundland for a storytelling festival. And this festival has historically asked all of their performers to do a few school gigs while they're in town for the storytelling festival. But a couple of weeks before the festival, before I flew out, the director called me up, kind of embarrassed, to inform me that 6 St. John's high schools had turned my show down. Even though the festival was going to be paying my fee, and it would have cost these schools nothing to bring me in, she was more than a little embarrassed about the whole situation, and she confessed that this had never happened before to her, any other storytellers. She said the principals were concerned I might upset certain parents, that I perhaps was not appropriate somehow for a high school environment. So I only did 2 school shows in St. John's that past November. The only 2 schools that would have me, which were the Catholic school, ironically, and an alternative school for kids who had dropped out of the public school system altogether, many of whom, talking to them, had been bullied right out of their education, and or battled learning disabilities or other challenges. Both of these shows were fantastic, full of really good discussions and intelligent questions. It was a really great way to spend a Thursday. On that very same Thursday night in St. John's, the unthinkable happened. One of the students from a school that had turned down my anti-bullying show took his own life that night. I don't know him. I never had the chance to meet him. I don't know if he was gay or even if he was bullied. I don't know anything, and now I'll never know. But obviously something was going on for him, and of course there's no way to know if a 1-hour storytelling show and a little discussion afterwards might have changed this terrible outcome for this boy and his family and his friends and fellow students who will all carry his death now for the rest of their lives. How do I know that? Because I carry my cousins. It's right here with me right now. So I don't know. I don't know that my show would have changed anything. I don't know that, but what really haunts me is that I don't know that it wouldn't have helped him either, right? And I send my compassion and love out to his family and all those classmates, and then I have to ask, what exactly will it take for school administrations to realize that providing a safe school environment for all kids is more important than catering to the bigotries of the few? I want to read you now a part of an article that my friend Matt Pearson, Western alumnus, Matt Pearson, he's now an Ottawa-based writer and journalist, published a couple of weeks ago. It was called The Arithmetic of Shame. And Matthew writes, "You may have read or seen on the news recently that a teenage boy in Ottawa took his own life after struggling for some time with depression and the challenges of being the only openly gay student at his suburban high school. I covered this tragic story as a reporter for a daily newspaper, and I have remained troubled by it for days afterward. I did not know this child, but what I do know, at least in part, was the depth of despair he too often felt. It mirrored what I felt more than 15 years ago as a confused and pimply teen growing up in Woodstock, Ontario. At my Catholic elementary school, I was called names on the playground years before understanding the full and hurtful meaning of them. I was made to feel different, and not in a good way, because I preferred drama. And really, who doesn't prefer drama, right? Because I hung out mostly with girls, and I didn't like rough and tumble competitive sports. I soon became isolated. I developed a deep sense that even if I didn't quite know what those words meant, it must have been something pretty awful, judging by the way some boys I had known for years spit them at me. I started bringing candy and bubble gum to school to give out freely on the playground at recess. Later, I became one of those chauffeur teens, always glad to give someone a ride somewhere, even if it was way out of my way. This is the arithmetic of shame. The subconscious calculations I made in hopes people could find in me enough good things to compensate for the one unspeakably ugly part. I switched to the public school system for high school, and I hoped my troubles were behind me, as most of my classmates continued on to the Catholic high school, but it only got worse. And I know now, years later, that high school sucks for just about everyone, but back then, I thought it was my own private hell. The verbal harassment was almost unbearable and came from people, often boys, but sometimes girls too, who I'd never even seen before. How could they know something about me that I was only beginning to understand? I was never physically beaten up, which is a good thing, because far too many young people are victims of assault. But while it may seem masochistic, I often wished I was, because then perhaps teachers and fellow students would see for themselves the black eyes and bruises of hate. There were hallways, nooks and crannies in that school where I never dared to go, especially on my own. And this was a school where my father, a kind man who has loved and supported me unconditionally since the day I came out a dozen years ago, was the principal. I know it pains him still that he could not protect me. That kills me, that part. So that's the end of Matthew's quote. So last year I had a gig in a Vancouver area high school. It was for the Dare to Stand Out conference, which is a gathering of GLBTQ students and their queer or ally teachers. And even though I was in a high school for an explicitly homo-positive event, I still had the familiar heart pound, mouth dry, watch my back feeling descend upon me as I entered through the double glass doors, past the school office, and followed the rainbow signs that led me to the gymnasium. I was an adult, 42 years old. I was about to speak to a bunch of queer kids and teachers. I had officially been out of school for longer than I was ever in school, but still, my body's memory took me back to my own 16-year-old self. So how do I know that I still need to work to make school safer for all kids? Because I'm still afraid of entering a high school. To this day, even now, even for something like this. My nerves quickly disappeared when I walked into the gym and saw the 16-year-old pretty boy with the mohawk and the eyeliner who was setting up the mics, not to mention the awesome kick-ass young woman behind the soundboard whose name tag read Darth Vader. And her sidekick, dubbed Stormtrooper, of course, our next generation. I love them all, just on principle. I feel fiercely, almost irrationally protective of them. And I want everything to be so much different for them than it was for us. I want them to be able to be unapologetically out of the closet and safe in their schools. I want them to feel nothing but memories of joy and triumph should they ever return to a high school for any reason, 20-some years from now. I know. What a dreamer, right? But why not? Why not? Why not imagine building a safe, respectful environment for all kids to be educated in right now? Is it not the year 2012? And are we not in Canada? Why expect anything less than that? And why settle? Why? Because we had to? To me, that's simply not good enough. The fact that so many of us, queer or fat or nerdy or smart or slow or brown or from somewhere that is not here, still cannot fathom or imagine school without the accompanying torment or hassle or trauma is a sign to me of just how much work we still need to do in our schools for all kids, not just the queer ones. So I'm going to tell you basically what I said to all those young and beautifully out already faces that day. Number one, always remember that working to make your school safer for queer students or bisexual students or gender non-conforming students, this is not a selfish act. Creating a safe school for yourself will only lead to a safer school for everybody, and everyone deserves a safe place to learn in. Not feeling safe at school can seriously affect your ability to access your own education, which can impact your life for the rest of your life. Right? So when you work to make your school better for you, you are doing your school and everyone in it, and everyone who will ever be in it in the future, a gigantic favor. Never forget that. Number two, I told them, you deserve so much more than to just be tolerated. You deserve to be loved for exactly who and what you are right now. This is, of course, a double-edged sword. This also means that you must return the favor. Learn about racism, if you don't already know, or sexism, if you don't already know, and ableism, if you don't already know, learn about these things too. You unfortunately are probably already well aware of how much homophobia can hurt inside and out. And learning more about how different kinds of oppression work and where they intersect will help you build better bridges with others, create a safe and respectful school culture for everybody. Bullies are almost always outnumbered by the bullied. We just need to organize. Number 3, remember that not everyone is able to come out to everyone all of the time. Some of us cannot come out to our parents yet, or our work, or our teammates, or even our friends. It's okay to know who you are and keep it private if your own safety requires it. This does not mean you are any less queer, or radical, or cool than that guy with the purple hair and the rainbow stockings. It just means that he has different circumstances than you do. Number 4, it does actually get better, especially when you make it better. There are lots of us out there who care a whole lot, whether it feels like it or sometimes or not. I'm one of them. I will never stop coming into high schools to meet kids just like you until I stop feeling scared. Every fucking time I walk through those front doors, I will keep working to make all schools safer for all of us. I promise you that. And in the meantime, when I get home, I will watch It Gets Better videos. Not because they are any kind of a real solution, but because they make me, a comfortably out for almost 25 years, full-grown adult, feel a little bit better so I can get up the next day and get to work, actually making it a little bit better. I actually love the It Gets Better series. I do. I know we need these stories, even though Dan Savage sometimes is a bit of an idiot. But anyway, I know we need these stories, and they can be accessed from any public computer anywhere. I know kids need them, but now I want to hear from some straight kids. I want to hear from adults. I want to hear from teachers vowing to grow up, step up, and make it better. I want to hear stories about straight kids who have moved from fear to humanity, stood up, become allies. I want former adult haters to tell their conversion stories. I want to hear from teachers who finally got so ashamed of pretending that this wasn't a literacy issue to challenge other teachers to teach all their kids by making their classrooms a place where ignorance and fear are challenged with information and compassion. I am sick of moving people to tears with stories of casualties from the warfare that we let our children wage upon each other. I'm sick of young dead boys becoming icons of public compassion and Rick Mercer rants we can all share on Facebook with each other. Meanwhile, we all continue to allow our principals and school administrators to cater to the conservative and religious right and pretend that our kids don't all pay the price for their apathy and their cowardice. Bullies grow up. That's the other thing. Their behavior gets modified. Sometimes their language gets slicked over with education, and they become the political, financial, and social arbiters of life as we know it in this country. I bet you any money that Stephen Harper was a bully in school. I'd stake money on it, big money on it, and don't we all wish now that someone had nipped him in the bud before it was too late? Before it was too late for this entire country. It is time for us to write ourselves some new stories, people. Seriously. So, let me tell you a story. Last year, I got invited to a high school on the west side of Vancouver, the rich part. It was an arts-enhanced school, and I had been asked to come in specifically because one of the students there was transitioning in grade 9, and they were throwing him a birthday party. Not because it was his actual birthday, but because he was being reborn. And I'm not talking about in a white robe in the river, kind of reborn. The school threw him a party and bought him a cake. They informed the entire student body of his new name, his new pronoun preference, and that he would now be using the boys' washroom. Amazing, right? I'm a suck. I am. I'm a suck. I feel my feelings, and I cried throughout most of that day. Hope, relief, redemption, palpable, caught in my throat, pounding in my heart, just because I got to see one good story. For a change. But what a change, right? So what did that school spend to make that kid's life so much better? It cost them the cost of a birthday cake. That's what they spent. And what did they save? Perhaps his life? Maybe the lives of countless other kids who took heart and hope that maybe school and life does not suck as hard as it did yesterday. Maybe school and life were worth sticking around for after all. So ask me now, how important it is for queer teachers and school staff to come out of the closet. How important is it for queer athletes and rock stars and radio hosts and storytellers? How much did you need a role model when you were a kid? And did you really, truly have one? So a couple of weeks ago, I was at a gig, and a young butch friend of mine came up to ask me if I would help her out with her art school homework. She said she was doing a photo project. She was taking pictures of older butches. You know, like documenting her elders, right? Sure, I thought to myself, I know several older butches who I could hook her up with. Now, a couple of them have moved to the Sunshine Coast like they do, you know. But I could certainly track them down, probably on Facebook, you know, no problem. And it slowly dawned on me that she was referring to me, that I was somehow the older butch that she wanted to document. And at first this realization made me laugh, and then it made my right knee ache, like it does when when the weather's changed. There it goes right there. It makes a kind of a popping. Anyway, I'm 43, she's 21. I can't help but do the math. I had been, and I can still do the math. Anyway, I had been out of the closet for 3 years already by the time she was born. I was navigating my way through the gender binary blues when she was learning to do up the Velcro straps on her first day of kindergarten shoes. She's probably never dialed a rotary phone. More and more at my shows this happens. Young butches, barely whiskered, trans guys have come up and tell me that my books and stories help them get through high school or even junior high. Ooh. And they say this in a bar, and that means they're in a bar. Anyway, they thank me for being a role model. And this makes me feel simultaneously honored and terrified. Makes my heart sing to know that they had what I didn't even know I needed when I was a kid, someone they could imagine growing up to be like. Makes my heart pound to know that this means I now have to somehow be worthy of that kind of respect. Think about it. How could I possibly be a role model when I feel like I'm just now starting to fit into my own skin? When I'm still stretching and bending the space around me to make room for myself? How could I possibly give advice away to anyone when I just got my hands on it? I find it's way easier to imagine whispering any wisdom I may have gleaned from the last 4 decades into the ear of a younger me. If I could magically tell my younger self something I know now that I wish I had known then, what would that be? First of all, I would tell myself not to be too proud to ask for advice. Remember, I would tell myself. You don't have to take advice just because someone has given it to you. Of course, my 21-year-old self may not have taken the time to listen to present-day me. Probably wouldn't have, but I will continue now regardless, okay? Dear younger self, I would say, floss your teeth. It turns out you will eventually be a working artist, just like you always dreamed. And a man named Stephen Harper will one day rule this land, and he will care nothing for artists, or queers, or even health care. And you need your teeth. And you like your teeth. And you alone will be financially responsible for them. And floss is cheaper than even your commie, pinko, East End lesbian dentist will be. Dear younger self, quit smoking. Please see above. I'm not going to say this again. Okay, I am actually. Quit smoking right now, younger self. Your mother is worried that no one is going to like you, or hire you, or even love you if you look like that. She's wrong. And the next bit is really important, okay? She does not mean to intentionally do you harm or cause you to fear who and what you truly are. She just worries because she fears what the world is going to do to you. And because she doesn't know any successful tattooed butch storytellers with biceps and a brush cut. Yet. Yet. But one day she will, and she is going to love the hell out of future you. Trust me on this one. Do not cave into the pressure from mainstream society. I can't even say it. Mainstream society to fit in. You do not, and you will not, ever fit in. And one day you will realize you don't even want to anymore. And that your difference is inherently tied to your beauty and your bravery and your giant, mystical, invisible brass balls. And you are going to love these balls. And they will swing majestically between your ears, inside the head that you will hold up proudly. Did you get that part, CTV? Fantastic. Do not cave into the pressure from the queer community to fit in either. Make your own decisions. Trust your own heart. Being butch, not just a bus stop on the highway to transitioning, except for when it is. That you will learn to love your butch self if you do ever decide to go on testosterone, build yourself into a good man. The last thing this world needs is another misogynist prick. Be the man your father accidentally taught you to be. Even if it was only because you didn't have a brother to help him out in the shop. Whenever possible, be polite. In the long run, your good manners will serve you better than even your most righteous rage. Find a tailor. Be good to them. Get your pants hemmed properly. And learn what it feels like to have your clothes really fit your body. People come in all shapes. Clothes do not. This is a wrong that can easily be righted. The world is going to try to squeeze you into so many things that do not fit you, but your clothes need not be one of them. You can tell me after why that's so hilarious. Seek out a mentor. Listen to what they have to say, and then follow your own path. Keep a journal, because one day, someone's going to look up to you and even ask you for advice, and you are going to wish you had taken better notes. So go. Find yourself a mentor. Be a role model. Be a leader. Be the change we need to see. Don't wait for it to get better. Make it better. Write us some better stories. Because somewhere there's a kid out there who really needs your strength and your courage. Someone out there needs you to be every bit of your brave and beautiful, fabulous, talented self. Thank you. So the only other thing I wanted to share, what did I do? Okay, so I wanted to share with you this letter that I got. It's an email, and I did a high school gig. I came home, and ding, got an email, and this is from this girl named Georgia, and I'm just going to read it exactly how she wrote it. So it says, "Hey." Like 4 E's and 2 Y's. So you came into my school today, Langley Fine Arts. And yeah, you're a Y-O-U-R, I know. So, kids these days. You're so right. Everyone is so amazing here compared to my old school. It's ridiculous. It was pajama day today. And last time at my old school, I remember crying because I was the only one that actually showed up in my pajamas. Exclamation mark times 3. So it is a lot different. I also wanted to say that I left you. I got in the car with my older brother and I told him all about you and what you had to say. And he goes, "Georgia, you're one of those girls. You're one of those mean girls." I totally yelled at him and then gave him the silent treatment the whole way back. But when I wasn't talking to him, I was thinking, yeah, I am one. I'm a Carrie Ann or a Wendy. There's this whole story that I do about Wendy Tracy Sanders-Jeannie and Carrie Ann, the 5 mean girls in my school. I'm a Carrie Ann or a Wendy or that volleyball team, but I don't want to be. I came home and I watched a ton of your videos on YouTube, rewinded and rewatched them over and over and over again. And honestly, I just wanted to say thanks because even though I have all this respect for you, I don't always give that respect to people when I first meet them on the street. And I know I'm not going to change this second because it's been a part of me since I can remember, but I'm going to be conscious of it all the time now. And the thing I loved about you is that you're realistic. You're not trying to glamorize or censor anything. You're just getting your point across. Also, your tattoos. I know you know you're making an impact. I just wanted to be the extra email that helps motivate you to never quit. Thanks so much, Georgia. So I read that because I get a lot of letters from kids who get bullied in schools, and every once in a while I get a letter from the bullies too as well. And those are, to me, some of the most powerful ones for some reason. And it's interesting, the culture of school that will bully kids into bullying as well.